Holy hell, what in the world is Paul George doing? After being the centerpiece of one of the worst trades in history, Playoff P underperformed to where he's now getting booed in his home city, just to run to his podcast and call them the B team. Paul George has been ridiculed for years due to his playoff choke jobs, but I think the Paul George hate in Philadelphia has reached an absolute tipping point.
This is why I don't like Paul George. I don't like George Paul to the slightest T. If God was to send me to hell, I still wouldn't like Paul George. I'ma hate Paul George even in the afterlife.
Now, Paul George started out honestly as a guy that the world loved to root for. The dude was an underscouted kid, forced to play at Fresno before balling out and getting drafted in the lottery. He had nothing really given from before high school to the pros, playing a bench role for Indiana as he entered the league. But again, Paul George started to build a career for himself through excellent play when opportunity arose. After Danny Granger's body gave out on him, the Indiana Pacers had homegrown defensive powerhouse that was missing out on a major scoring piece at his own position. Paul George fit in like a glove and blossomed on some of the most memorable teams of the era, climbing over 20 points per game. Even after he snapped his leg in half, George came back to immense success in Indiana's lineup. But what you may not remember is his play would only grow with the moment. From the years 2013 through 2017, in the prime of the Pacers' run, George was a 22-point scorer on 43% and 37% shooting splits in the regular season, while in the playoffs putting up 24.4 points per game on 43% and 41% shooting splits. By 2017, Paul George was a legitimate star that was demanding to be taken seriously, and as they matched up with the defending champion Cavaliers, Paul George would take to the media to air out his grievances with CJ Miles, who took and missed the game-winning shot of Game 1 following a hard double on George.
But he didn't do so. I gave it up, to soften him up and try to get it back. I talked to CJ about it. Situations like that, I got to get the last shot.
Now, those were kind of some harsh words, of course, but when the ball was in George's hands, with the series on the line down 3-0 in Game 4, at least the world knew that they could rely on PG to get the job done.
Possession, they get it back though, miraculously, 6 to go, trying to get free, George for the tie, missed everything, James with the rebound, and that punctuates the type of afternoon it's been for Paul George.
The PG, and he missed it, right? He had like the side of the backboard, tough ass shot, not even gonna come close. Get in the locker room, no bullshit, I'm like, damn, season over, fuck it, I'm about to go to the crib. Oh, time to go have some fun. Cause CJ, he did me like this. It was the Gatorade commercial with the shot on the clock. Somebody had made it, and he had bricked that bitch.
Ball game.
Missed everything.
I mean, Paul George publicly airing out dirty laundry on his own teammate should have never entered the media room. Why the hell are you criticizing your own teammate to a room of people whose job it is to take every word you say and plaster it on every headline everywhere? Paul George would go out just a couple of nights later with their season on the line just to put up 15 points on 23% shooting, then missing a game winner. This was poetic justice, really. Paul George basically cursed himself from this moment forward because since that interview, Paul George has been doomed to embarrass himself basically every single playoffs. PG would be traded to the Thunder to form a Walmart Big Three with Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony before matching up with a rookie Donovan Mitchell in the first round. Now, the Thunder sticking towards the middle of the Western Conference were nowhere near elite, but I mean, come on now, this was a heavy favorite. Carmelo Anthony had been getting buckets for a million years, Russell Westbrook was an MVP the year prior who had been to an NBA Finals, and Paul George was a former face of a contending franchise who also had the luxury of being one of the best two-way players in the NBA. PG could go out there and score 0 points, play decent defense on Donovan Mitchell, who was basically the entire firepower of the Jazz offense, and the Thunder would go in and win in 5 games. George was clearly very confident talking to the media once again to say the following about his matchup with Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm used to it. I'm used to this. Y'all ain't met playoff P yet, huh? I'm used to these matchups. I'm used to playing against the best offensive guy during these moments. So, that'll be my role. Not to say Corey won't guard him, but that'll definitely be my role.
Well, Mitchell met playoff P, and he gave him 28 points per game as a rookie, scoring more than twice as much as anyone else on his team, and sent him home in the first round of the playoffs in 6 games. I mean, I have no idea why playoff P keeps opening his mouth, because time after time, he eats his words immediately after. Following the loss to D. Mitch, PG went on to have what was the best regular season of his career so far. In 2019, George put up 28 a game on 44 and 38% shooting splits with a league-leading 2.2 steals a night. I mean, Russ gave George the keys to the team 2 years after his MVP year, and George put up an MVP campaign of his own, coming in 3rd place in both MVP and DPOY voting. George played out of his mind this year, there's no doubt about it, but if you think that this was enough to lift the curse that was on his shoulders, you would be out of your damn mind, because matching up in the first round against Dame Dalla put the Thunder to bed.
Clock is off. Portland has a timeout. Lillard, a chance to send the Thunder home. Lillard, long-range 3, and it's good! At the buzzer! Damian Lillard! Are you kidding me?
And I don't know if this dude is just like really bitter or something, but again to the media, he had to go and add some gasoline onto the firestorm of shit.
Yeah. I mean, that's a bad shot. Care what anybody says, that's a bad shot. But hey, he made it. That story won't be told that it was a bad shot. We live with that.
I mean, somebody at this point has to take the dude's fucking microphone away from him. He called out his own teammate just to airball a game winner by 4 feet. He told D. Mitch he was meeting playoff P before getting the belt to his ass, and now after getting absolutely torched with a good night shot over the top of his own head, sending him home early, and being favored in the series, he thought it would be a good idea to criticize his shot selection before his trip to Cancun. This point was really where the Paul George saga went from bad to very bad. Up to this point, PG's playoff averages were pretty consistent to slightly improved to his regular season performance. But after George would be traded to the Clippers the following year, we would see the absolute worst of playoff P. Now, first off, just arriving in his hometown literally costed the Clippers everything. In return, I mean, they basically threw the whole damn book at them. 4 unprotected first rounders that have already proven to be gold, with one being Jalen Williams, a lottery protected first rounder, 2 pick swaps, Gallinari, who was a pretty damn good scorer, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is an MVP candidate, a legitimate superstar and already way the hell better than Paul George ever was at his peak. PG intended to go home with hopes of winning a championship for his hometown team that had never reached gold. Instead, he literally absolutely f***ed their chances of ever winning a championship ever. Now regardless, this trade was bound to go down as one of the worst trades in NBA history. But the absolute train wreck that was about to unfold in LA made this criminal. The world woke up to the news of the PG trade and Kawhi signing for the Clippers to be plastered all over billboards in Los Angeles, being called the new Kings of SoCal and the #1 odds to take home an NBA championship, before putting together what could very well be the biggest choke job in NBA history. Now, the Clippers, after an injury-ridden regular season, were at full strength when it came to the playoffs. I mean, they had multiple months in which the NBA was suspended to recover. There were really no excuses. And after squeaking by the Mavericks in 6 games, the stage was set to steamroll the Nuggets before matching up for the Battle of LA in the Western Conference Finals. Instead, after jumping out to a 3-1 lead, the Clippers would blow 4 straight games on the back of one of the worst Game 7 performances I've ever seen in my life from Paul George. This dude put up just 10 points on 4 for 16 shooting, or 25% from the field, and shooting 2 for 11, or 18% from 3, while Jamal Murray ran around torching threes and basically humiliating the entire Clippers franchise. I mean, Kawhi royally shit the bed this game as well, but Paul George was chucking up bricks that were coming absolutely nowhere close to the rim.
They've gotten a number of second shots, though.
George, way off. It's the side of the backboard.
I mean, that's a bad shot.
I mean, this dude got absolutely fried for this. They traded an MVP and half a decade of picks for Pandemic P to come in there and shoot 25% while chucking bricks at the side of the backboard. The Clippers were out of commission after this run, basically. I mean, with Kawhi's injury, they had no chance on the back of Pandemic P. Paul George managed to become even more hated, as he would sit out of games that fans paid hard-earned money to only demand a supermax with a no-trade clause when his contract ended. I mean, this dude is a 34-year-old asking for a supermax with a no-trade clause after clearly being the worst trade in Clippers history. I have no idea what kind of expectations this dude had for himself in LA, like they were gonna flip a 40-year-old James Harden and somehow build around Paul George on a supermax. Surprisingly, the Clippers were actually smart enough to not let Paul George rob them twice, and losing him to free agency for nothing, which was basically the best route at that moment. But shockingly, the 76ers were the schmucks to meet his wishes. I mean, PG is clearly good, but at 34 years old, this guy is worth nowhere near $200 million. PJ would go on to say he wants to retire in Philadelphia and all that garbage, as well as saying how he's going back on his bully shit in Philly. I mean, if they don't want to get this guy for robbing the franchise, Philadelphia PD should incarcerate him just for being so corny. I mean, everyone in the world just wanted this guy to shut up and dribble pretty much. Well, instead, he's load managing and started a podcast.
So Podcast P, I want to pull this up before I say it. This season, 10 games played, 16 podcast episodes, salary $49 million. Are you getting paid for the podcast or you getting paid to play? How you got more podcast episodes than games played, nigga? It's been 27 games and you got 10 games played and 16 podcast episodes? We in different times,
yeah,
brother.
Philly ain't gonna go for it.
Yeah,
Philly ain't gonna go for it.
Yeah, and he's getting paid $50 million. Your podcast P, you're not playoff P. You run down on murder with that. Don't run down on me.
Paul George is easily having the worst season of his entire career this season, and he's broadcasting the whole thing on Podcast P. Paul George is putting up a career low since becoming a full-time starter at 17 points and 4 podcasts per game, while getting outplayed by a rookie nail tech drafted out of cosmetology school.
Paul George averaging like 15 points or something like that.
Yeah, it's not the PG we
had like
expected.
18 yesterday.
And he's consistently running more, but I agree. Like we need you to be that.
Be a dog, bro.
If you a max player.
Yeah, be a dog.
Yeah.
That's crazy because when people say, age and situations matter, but if I'm paying you as a max role, bro, I need max stats.
Yeah, bro. He's not 40, bro.
He averaging 14. He got Jeff Teague stats in Minnesota.
I mean, this Philadelphia experiment is going terribly at the moment. Of course, Joel Embiid's injuries are at the forefront of their struggles as they currently sit at 8-16, but Paul George is for sure not helping. This guy's clearly on the downhill at this time. I mean, he's 34 years old, and it's not his fault that the teams that acquire him are criminally bad decision makers, but somebody really has to unplug this dude's microphone. Podcast P has already gotten in the way multiple times this season, as controversy from his damn podcast have only worsened the energy of the Sixers locker room, which is already on life support. George would go on to say regarding the 76ers struggles that Jared McCain can't be their most consistent player. I mean, I know that he probably didn't mean any harm by it, but clearly when you word something like this, you gotta realize that this is a complete backhanded compliment to not only McCain, but Maxey, Embiid, Oubre, fucking everybody, dude. I mean, nothing good has ever came from Paul George picking up a microphone in his entire career thus far. I mean, things would only get worse for PG as he's podcasting through the NBA's most disappointing team season. After a 2-12 start to the year, George would go down with an injury after scoring just 2 points, and what he did the very next morning was clickbait his own team's struggles on a podcast episode. As you can probably expect, the comments are absolutely destroying him after dropping a fucking cast while his team is going through a Great Depression. Clickbaiting the team's downfall to get some views on the podcast is nasty work, man. Get off the podcast and lock in. We gave a max contract to a podcaster. I'm in shambles. Bro left the game hurt and fired up a podcast. Shake my head. 2-12 record. Nasty, nasty work. Retired, bro. Just do this shit full time. You're finished and you don't care about the game anymore. It's evident. I mean, I'm kind of like this guy. Watching him get grilled is honestly pretty hilarious. I mean, throughout his career, I don't even think this guy's done anything wrong, really. He just has no idea when the time or place to say absolutely anything is. And there was no better example than speaking on his time in LA after signing with Philadelphia.
I think initially, coming back to LA, that was home when I first came back to LA, but it's not the same love. Because when I was in LA, they like, man, you should have been a Laker. That's all I was hearing. It wasn't no like, "Oh, welcome to the Clippers." Yo, we happy you in LA, but you should have been a Laker.
You was on the second team.
I'm on the B team. That's how the vibe and the love felt, you know.
I mean, if anyone at Podcast P Studios is seeing this, they need to stop talking about the Clippers forever. They gave away their entire future to acquire PG. He shot 25% from the field and their one real shot from a championship and threw the ball at the side of the backboard while we all called him Pandemic P, just for PG to request a no-trade clause and call a whole franchise the B team. PG would get booed in his return to LA, and for some reason he was surprised by it. George would try to clear up the controversy and address the fans in LA, but as it usually goes, this would only feed the firestorm of controversy.
Funny, when the tribute was going on, the wall was cheering. And like, I ain't trying to hear that shit. I ain't trying to hear that shit now.
Wait.
So right after I wave them off, they go back to booing. Yeah, they was cheering and they was cheering right after the tribute.
Did you see the signs?
What did it say?
There was a couple of them like
they had a podcast.
Shut up and talk. Like stop. Think before you talk. And they.
What did I say
they
was
came
wrong?
prepared.
What did
say that again?
I did not call Clippers the B team. I said it felt like the B team just because of everywhere you go, people in LA say you should be a Laker. You should be a Laker. That wasn't minimizing. That wasn't, downplaying or, I was a Clipper. Like, that's who I chose to play for. Like, I wasn't, comparing them and saying that they were underneath the Lakers.
This Podcast P idea was literally the worst idea in history. I mean, ever since he called out CJ Miles in front of the Pacers reporters, he has basically been cursed into the worst timing in NBA history. From threatening to clamp up Donovan Mitchell only to get destroyed, getting a 30-footer dropped on his head to send him home, to Pandemic P, and now the most untimely comments imaginable, while the 76ers are currently the laughingstock of the entire NBA. Podcast P got paid $200 million to play for the 76ers, just to air dirty laundry on podcasts and play like an average third option. I have no idea what the Sixers are going to look like, honestly. Maybe when Embiid comes back, they can put together a run and maybe get back to 500. But until then, somebody needs to step in and turn this guy's mic off, because this is the corniest NBA player I've ever seen in my lifetime. Subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you boys in the next one. Peace out.